Okay, thank you. I'm going to call this meeting to order of the Penfield Building Committee at 6:05. We have a quorum, 5 members present, 2 members on the way. Oh, we now have more than a quorum. I'd like to have, make sure that everybody's comfortable with the meeting agenda this evening. I would like to recognize the fact that Joe Michelangelo is here, and if there is no objection, I'd like to move item 11 up first. He has another obligation, so I'd like to have him. That said, no objection to that? No objection. The next item is a review and approval of the meeting minutes from October 8th. I'd entertain a motion to waive reading and accept the minutes.
So moved.
We've waived reading and we're accepting the minutes. Are there any questions, edits, comments, corrections? Everybody have an opportunity to go over them?
Yes.
Welcome. That said, the motion's been made and seconded. Did you get that?
Yeah.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Against? Abstain?
I'll abstain, I wasn't here.
1 abstention? 2 abstentions? Not here at the meeting. At this time, I'd like to recognize Joe Michelangelo, Director of Public Works, to give us a brief update on where the town is with FEMA, and if Joe needs any more support from us. This is in lieu of having Bob Mayer here, but Bob is out this week.
Correct.
Yeah.
Thank you for moving me up. Just a status report. One thing that you've heard about before is the CEF, which was developed by our consultants with O'Brien in conjunction with FEMA. That was approved probably around 2.5 months ago now. So the next scope, as the next step in the procedure, as Mr. Mayor has probably outlined, is to review our plans, not review our plans, but go over our plans with FEMA and align the scope of work and everything we're doing with the CEF. So the CEF was basically developed through much of the damages and a lot of the construction of the original building. So when we go through it item by item, we have the original set of plans and our proposed set of plans with our dollar values. So when we compare those back and forth, a lot of the stuff is exactly the same in the building. There are some portions, obviously, where we're changing stuff. So with the stage we're at now, both myself and our consultants with O'Brien, and this is at the intermediate level, both myself and the gentlemen are dealing with that with O'Brien, our guy Bill Sherman and Bruce Smith. And we have rehashed that. We have outlined all the points in our case. The next step is to move it forward internally to Bob Mayer for the town of Fairfield, and Bill Riley is the gentleman from Win O'Brien. Bob Mayer is on vacation this week, but the next step is to go over that and basically solidify our case, all our presentation, and then we'd be ready to meet with FEMA. And the way we're going to handle FEMA is our first step. We have a local FEMA contact, a guy Dana Conover, who works for Demis in Hartford. We will first meet with him. This way, any issues that are outstanding, we will try to address there, and then we'll meet with the much larger FEMA group to identify all our project things and identify what's a no-brainer and what's a bone of contention. And as we played through this process, one of the in-kind stuff for the building itself, the finished portion of the building, is generally pretty standard, and there's not too many holes in it. To give you an example of something that we do have to make a justification for is, and I'll give a couple of them, I'll go pretty as deep as we want, but let's say our existing bathrooms and our locker facility. Well, we're changing the location of the locker facilities, but we're not doing it because it's an upgrade. We're changing the location because previously they were as far from the building, as far as from the beach as you can. They were inaccessible to a large part of the population, just the locker tenants could use them. So even though we're moving them from here to there, there's reason for doing that. We have the cost estimate, so we could show them that what the costs are, and they're in line with the CEF. So those are some of the type discussions that you have on every single item. And I said where, as you get further and further away from the building, the case doesn't get, not that it gets harder, but there's more details that you have to do for justification. And one of those, I'll use another example like the revetment wall, the thing that we're doing in front of the building. Well, the case that we have to make is, anything that's not specifically part of the building, you have to outline your case thoroughly, explain why you're protecting it, why it's cost effective, how it fits into the whole new design of the building. So there's a laundry list of these items, and I think we've got a pretty tight internal case. Mr. Riley and Mr. Mayor will finalize it, and then we'll be ready for our series of FEMA meetings with both the state level and the federal level, and we'll get our answer at that point.
Does FEMA provide you with, not does FEMA, does Riley and our consultant provide you with guidance regarding this part of the process?
Correct. They are the ones that have been through this before. Specific, Bob Mayer and I didn't know what a CES was, 2 years ago. These guys do it and are familiar with it, have done it different locations, and the scope alignment, once again, not something that me or Bob have ever done before. So yes, we rely on them to guide us through the process on how to do these type things.
What is a CEF?
That's that's the cost estimating format, which was developed. So that's where when we developed our 50% rule, and there was a number placed on the damage, which was approximately $7 million. That was developed in probably about 2.5 months ago. That was another document prepared based on the damages by our consultants, which was the one that gave us the answer to 50% rule. So now that we got that, we have to take the next step forward and show how our proposed construction project meets that. Where it doesn't meet that, we have to explain why we're doing it so it doesn't meet it, how it benefits the project, the reasoning for it, not just because we want to do it, we're doing it because better conforms, it's more cost effective, it addresses code issues, provides ADA access, stops erosion. So every one of those, you got to hit the right points where you're not doing everything the same.
Questions from the committee? Yes.
Joe, thank you for this information and update. Based upon what you've learned so far, do you have any estimate in terms of how long this process will take in working with both FEMA in Hartford and FEMA at large until we know exactly what will be covered and what won't be covered?
Well, we're ready to meet with the gentleman in Hartford first. That hasn't been set up yet, but I envision that'll be set up most likely in within hopefully 2 weeks, and hopefully in another 2 weeks after that we'd be able to meet with the federal FEMA guys, and they're if it ends there and everybody's happy, we're fine. There may be a series of serve and volleys till we get to the end, but hopefully hopefully the timing will be consistent with what the town board approvals going forward are. So.
Okay, so based upon what you're saying, certainly we wouldn't expect to know anything until at least the middle or end of November. Is that about?
Yeah, I'd say we're at least at that time frame.
Okay, thank you.
Question?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Who is actually responsible, who is the point person in terms of advocating the town's case before FEMA?
Bob Mayer will take the lead on that. So obviously he has input from our consultants, but Bob is the one who's ultimately responsible and the lead negotiator per se.
Okay. Is there a reason why Jim Wendt, who is, from what I understand, the town's FEMA compliance officer, is there a reason that he's not involved in this process at all? Do you know?
It's Jim handles most of the issues from a town regulatory standpoint, and he has advised us on a lot of these type issues. But I think this is outside of his expertise and duties as a FEMA compliance officer.
Okay, fair enough.
Floodplain manager, whatever.
Sure. One last question. Once you go through the process and you're looking at mid-November or thereabouts to get an answer from FEMA, how binding is that in your understanding? If they tell you that this is the amount of money you're going to get, and assuming that we check all the boxes and hit all the marks, is there any wiggle room for FEMA to come back and say, well, no, we're not going to pay you what we said we were, or is it a really binding resolution?
Yeah, unless we change anything, it's, once it's confirmed, but I think conversely on the other side, it is a actual cost thing, so if the prices go down, I think whatever the actual prices are, if there are, obviously we have a contingency in this project for a reason, it is based on the actual cost, so when they do the scope alignment, those are still based on the current bids, but if something unforeseen comes up that increases the project scope and work and cost, that would be part of the, included as part of the reimbursable project.
Okay, thank you, Jim.
Thank you. And to that point, right now, because you mentioned actual cost, Joe, so I guess for this committee and for Shawmut across the room here, as you work through, if I understand correctly, you're working through the CEF, which is the estimate was prepared by others to scope align. What are you going to need from this committee and or Shawmut when it gets to actual costs? If the estimate that's put forth on the CEF by line item is not how we have it broken out and everyone's managing this project, I think the committee and Shawmut would want to understand how we should possibly be tracking costs so that makes the job easier at the end of the day if it's based on actual costs.
Well, Shawmut will be tracking the cost as a matter of conducting business
Right.
for the project. So, we have the guaranteed price there. So unless there's those numbers there for the items there, they'll be tracking what, if any, changes come about there. So as part of the normal course of, any building project, if the electrical was estimated at, 150 and it's, for some reason it's, 250, that'll be, included as part of the general construction project. And, as we become aware of that, we could, plant the seed with our FEMA people just to let them know what happened and get some assurance that it's covered if that's like a safety valve.
Right, on the changes, I understand that. What happens where if in fact there's a CEF that has certain scopes of work that may have been already bundled in a electrical trade item, so to speak?
Yeah.
Will we be required, this committee, to decouple a one bid to provide scope-to-scope lines that would be within a trade package? There's only so many bid packages that went out, 16, 18 packages. If the scope of work where FEMA says this is eligible, this is not eligible, for Shawmut's purposes and this committee's purposes, it may already be in the electrical scope number by way of example.
Mm-hmm.
Are we going to be required to assist to pull those types of scope of work out before we get to any change orders?
I don't anticipate that, no. I don't think we'll have to do, with our, our bid currently, our financial information, should be detailed enough to do that comparison alignment of scope as it is right now. I don't think it needs to be broken down any further.
Okay, so really you be concerned about, or we should all be concerned about any changes to the existing plan going forward that will cost extra money above and beyond the GMP?
Correct, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Questions? I have a couple, Joe. Back to Jim Wendt. Is there any reason why we wouldn't bring him in, or has he been brought in on this? Is he aware of it?
He has been involved in some parts of the, providing us information on it. we can involve him, but like I said, I think this is outside of what his general role, function, and expertise is.
Was he involved in the other town reimbursable FEMA claims that have been paid? In other words, the cleanup and so forth?
No, he was not.
Yeah. Well, you might just speak to him and just make sure that he's comfortable. I just hate to have it come up after the fact. You don't need, I know you answered this question once, but you don't need any additional information from us, our architect or engineer?
No, during our review, and we spent probably, myself and the people at my level at Widow O'Brien probably spent around 2.5 weeks going over all this stuff, and all the information was there for them to do their work. At some stage there may be other questions, but I don't anticipate any now.
I want to take Steve's question a little bit further. This CEF, are we going to pay against, are we going to have to coordinate our payments or our scope or anything with the CEF, or has that already been done? I know it's the same kind of question, but I'm concerned about our responsibilities as a committee to track these costs, to get full reimbursement, which is where we're going. The
prices now are pretty detailed for each of the 20 different items there.
Right.
So as far as breaking down one of those specific ones, a large part of that will be, some of that may be determined as we do the scope alignment. For instance, the site work, they may say out of our site work, which whatever the bundle is, the dollar value of that, let's just pick a number, if it's 500,000, they may say the filling of sand on the west side is not eligible. And then we could come up with a estimate on what part of that 500,000 it's worth. But, I don't know if we have to do any of that now till the question's asked.
I'm concerned, again, I'm concerned about the fact we don't want to have to go into this thing backwards a year from now. We'd rather track the costs right now the way they want them. So if there is going to be a split, what it sounds like there could be, we're going to want to make sure that either our owner's oversight function or Shawmut and/or both track that accordingly, because that could be having negotiated reimbursements. If you lose your way on the project, it just takes. You almost have to re-argue some of the points that you won earlier. You did mention, and I'd just like to make sure we understand it as a committee, that they pay costs, which means if the electrical went from 150 to 250, they would pay for that.
Correct. You have to, obviously
Justify
justify why, but yes, it's based on actual.
There are three areas that we're where we have a project which doesn't quite align. One is the walkway through the building. And the other is the fact that we have probably, we're going to end up with more decks and ramps. I know we don't have our architect here, but I think we have some improvements as far as decks and ramps are concerned. And obviously we have landscaping because the building's higher, and we have the parking lot. What happens when you bring that up?
Well, the deck does improve the function of the building. It does allow a passage, so it is, you could easily show it to be efficient. The shortest distance between 2 points between a bather or a beach goer from the parking lot to the beach is through the building. So in a sense, it eliminates other paths that you have to create to the right and to the left. So that's part of our justification for that. Like I said, the harder sell type ones is why are you filling a parking lot 100 feet from a building? Why are you raising that? Why are you putting stone on the beach side of the wall? How does that help the building? So those are the ones that are the biggest stretch. But anything related to the building itself, once again, we list our points just like you make any case. And for the building itself, and you cited some good examples there, we have to make our case of how that walkway fits in, show them what it costs us, show it what it saves us, shows how it, it's, a desired part of the building, the reasons why we're doing it, and, along those lines.
Any reason why we wouldn't proceed? And, in other words, we're on our way with FEMA. There's no reason why we wouldn't proceed with the project that I know you're well aware of.
Yeah, correct. There hasn't been any surprises or hiccups in this initial step, or this step. I
Process.
wouldn't call it initial, but with this step of aligning our CEF, and then once again, I expect it to, the next 3 steps are coming up, and I think we're on the correct path.
So the project, it's anticipating the project will start in February, and you will know more by February, but maybe not the whole story, or what do you think?
Yeah, it's I'd say most likely we should have all, if not most, of the answers regarding our scope alignment and what's in and what's out by then.
Questions?
Joe, about a year ago, comments were made relative to perhaps being able to hold some of the costs down by the town doing some work, and it was kind of shot down. And now I understand that the town will be doing some work, and that's above and beyond the numbers that these gentlemen are going to go through with us tonight. So I was just curious as to approximately, if you know, how many man-hours are going to be needed by town employees to do the jobs that the town will be doing on this project.
Yeah, through the purchasing agent, Mr. Bradley asked that question about a week or 2 ago, and Twig Holland forwarded that to Jim. I have a copy on my phone. I think the overall numbers, we put a value on those numbers. We tried to estimate that. The overall cost, I think we put at about $82,000 of the different items that were identified, and a lot of those are in-house ones with what it costs for town labor, what it costs for town trucks, some other items, the out-of-pocket expense and contractors, so purchasing of gravel, purchasing of catch basins, of pipe, and line striping, direct out-of-pocket costs. We put at an estimate of, I think, $39,000. And once again, I'm going by my handwritten notes. I sent the email, I believe, on Tuesday on that.
Okay, thank you.
I've just provided the copy of the email. I think we have a work in process, as I understand it, between the town and the purchasing authority as far as the total costs are concerned. I explained to the first selectman that when the committee originally addressed this, you requested out-of-pocket costs to be paid by the committee, and the town would do the labor. And I think that was, at that time, I think it was $35,000 for asphalt. And I notice in your email, it's still $35,000 for asphalt, and it's $6,000 for equipment rental.
Okay. I think that's for the base. I think the asphalt's still coming out of the project.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So now that we're on this subject, and just briefly, what are we carrying on the parking lot and the base project?
Parking lot is raising the grade up, so what we own is doing the asphalt paving, and Public Works are doing the catch basins and bringing the base up.
And I believe we also, when we figured that, we also included removing the asphalt, removing the brick pavers, and putting processed gravel back for the subbase.
Okay.
Correct.
We need a clarification on that, but I don't want to stop right here on that one for the moment. That said, any other questions of Mr. Michelangelo? Joe, thank you very much, and thank you for all the work you've been doing for this project.
Thank you. Good luck.
That said, we can get back to our agenda. We have a presentation, agenda item 5, a presentation by Shawmut Design and Construction of the final draft of the guaranteed maximum price for Project 7A. And as the committee knows, one of the interim actions that the chair took on behalf of the committee was to ask that, that Ken, representing Shawmut, provide us with this information and respond to our questions. The reason, frankly, is we'd like to hear from you, Ken, number one. Number two, we're getting ready to vote this project, and I want to make sure that the representations come from you and your management. Not that I have any issues or problems with anybody else. We just want to hear it. So if you would take us through that item for us?
Sure. Thanks, Jim. So we are really excited tonight to be able to present the final draft of the GMP. There is a whole booklet of paperwork on your, in front of you folks that's showing of, that we go through tonight. The overall job cost where we're at, and this has been vetted out between Shawmut and the town attorney and Ms. Twig Holland in terms of the GMP values, all the clarifications and everything was all been vetted out together over the last 2 weeks. So where we're currently at right now is that the overall project cost, including the GMP and the soft costs, we're at $7,421,999. That's on the bottom portion of the soft cost sheet. That includes the soft costs along with the GMP. The soft costs have been increased by $7,000 to add in the utility charges. And we have come up with that calculation in terms, from some past history of some jobs that we've done here in the town of Fairfield for power and for water. So we have included $7,000 in soft costs for the charges during the work.
I'm sorry, Ken, which sheet are you working off?
On the soft cost sheet, the one-page soft cost
Single
sheet?
sheet?
Yeah, single sheet. Other than that, everything else has all stayed the same from the last time this was presented. Is there any questions that you'd like me to go over on the soft cost sheet?
Yeah, I'd like to consider this presentation and this package one document at a time. The first document that we received is the,
Should be in your package. It looks like this.
You get to this, it's right in front of it.
first document is the Penfield Pavilion Project GMP proposal.
Okay. So our GMP has not changed that much from what you've seen 2 weeks ago, and it's the same document that was sent out this past Tuesday night to Mr. Bradley. The overall value of our GMP is $6,589,629. The items that have changed from the last time we have discussed this, there's 2 items. As we go through and confirmed all the trade contractors and got everything ready to submit their letters of approval in terms of holding their bid to November 15th, there's 2 trades that have asked for additional funding due to the wage rate increase as of July. One of them was the site contractor, and he has asked for $10,000 of an increase. And the second one was K&M Fire Protection for the fire sprinkler system. They asked for $5,000. These items here have been vetted out with Ms. Holland, and we have spoken about them, and these costs have been included in our GMP.
I thought you said, excuse me, I thought you said there were 3 trade contractors.
2.
2?
Everybody else has agreed to hold their number. We have letters that have that all signed off on in our possession, and as long as we issue them a letter of intent by 11/15, they will hold their values.
I apologize, committee, I thought this was distributed to all committee members on Tuesday.
No, just
Just to
you,
me?
Jim, yeah.
Okay. So we're going to spend some time going over it. So the GMP, we had 2 questions on the GMP. Make sure that it included any increases if the bids were to be maintained. The second thing was the GMP coordinated with the CM contract? And we asked you, I think, Twig, and town council to, the town attorney to go through that. And you have done that?
We have, and everything syncs up.
Okay, you did this afternoon issue a email that I did circulate to the committee, which was about questions with the CM contract. We might want to address those. I think everybody has, I only had one question, but I'd be happy to entertain questions from the committee. This is an email that Twig sent out, wherever it is here, at 12:30 PM.
Was today?
Yeah. And it addresses, I don't know, Twiggy, whether you want to make reference to it now that it's been distributed. It really is just several clarifications that I think we understood anyway. You might want to just reference this document, and I don't think you have to go through every one, but just hit what you might consider to be questions for the committee, or issues the committee might want to
Sure.
consider.
Was there anything specific there where you'd like me to begin?
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, do we have a copy of that? I mean,
I have a copy right here, but you got one.
at 12 o'clock today, I mean, I was at work.
What, the email? Yeah. I received the email, yes.
It was forwarded right after, so it must have been forwarded around 1 o'clock, I don't know. But we can simply go over them. This is not,
Sure.
1252 was circulated.
I'll be
But
happy.
Twig, why don't you just quickly go over them?
Of course.
And this is, if I understand this correctly, this is the result of the review that took place between you and the town attorney?
It is. The town attorney reviewed the GMP document compared to contracts A-133 and A-201 that had previously been signed with Shawmut. Everything syncs up from a legal perspective. The review that I did was to go back through my notes from the previous meeting and answer specific questions that the committee had. So I'll just touch on the more salient points. There's a line in the allowances that Shawmut is not responsible for conflicts, and I think that was understood to be perhaps be conflicts among the contracting party. And in contracting speak and construction speak, it means conflicts with the drawings, where somebody isn't trying to put a plumbing line through a steel beam. And so that is consistent with the way the contract is written. It really is to the architect's responsibility to review their documents and make sure everything aligns. The GMP excludes mold and any hazardous material that is consistent with all town contracts that we do. As the owner, we always get to be responsible for any hazardous material. Shawmut assumes no responsibility for compliance of design with applicable codes, standards, and so forth. I referred to sections in both A-133 and A-201 which support that. That really is a function of the architectural and design work to make sure that all codes and standards are followed.
I have a question.
Sure.
It has to be built in accordance with the documents. They have to be particularly careful about making sure that the construction's built in accordance with the construction documents and code compliant in that regard.
That is correct. It was noted that there was nothing in the soft costs for utility consumption. The town usually is responsible for that. So we did add, I went back and researched the cost for some other projects, averaged them out over the course of 10, I think it was 10 months, and we did add $7,000 to the soft cost schedule. The other discussion point was Shawmut's use of a contingency, the construction manager's contingency, up to $20,000. That's in the allowances, and that also echoes section 2.2.4 of document A-133. We allow that in all town contracts for one primary reason, especially for addition and renovation projects. If the construction manager discovers an existing condition that needs to be addressed right away, it could be challenging or risky to the owner to stop work, wait 2 weeks for a building committee meeting, and then for the building committee to authorize an expenditure and then resume work. You risk delay claims when you get involved in something like that. What we do is we allow Shawmut to spend up to $20,000 out of their contingency. They're managing that, and our requirement is that they immediately notify the owner. It's often a subset or the the officers of the building committee. Hey, ran into we're going to need to spend some money out of our contingency, and it's usually done by email. And then the authorization is brought to the full building committee at the next meeting. And so what that does is it allows the contractor some grace money, if you could say that, and some time to more efficiently manage a project, especially if there are unknown existing conditions.
Okay, let's stop with 16. We have a particularly difficult project, a project we're going to have to track changes, a project that may have unforeseen conditions and damages, a project where we have contingency, now hopefully adequate contingency. I'm unhappy with this. I don't think it's appropriate for this particular project. Either we lower the number or tighten up the approval. I think carte blanche on $20,000 anytime you need it. I know you all trust you. I know you're going to do a great job, but we need some kind of control over this. The committee could certainly appoint 2 or 3 members to field these questions on any. Oftentimes, it'll be 3 members of the committee. Any 2 contacted will provide the approval. But I'm uncomfortable in this type of a public project with this exposure, both political and financial, with this particular clause. I'd like to hear comments from anybody on the committee.
Can I just question, you said that we will be notified at the next meeting. What can we possibly do after the money has been spent at the meeting, other than to say, thank you for telling us you spent the money? So in other words, if there was some, I think the thrust of your question is, what good is telling us 2 weeks later that you spent the money?
What other building committees have done and continue to do, for instance, the projects that are ongoing now, is they authorize the committee officers to review any of these requests to spend the CM contingency, and that's usually done by email. And so I'm not going to be able to think of an example, but we have had situations on both the Riverfield and the Fairfield-Ludlow High School project where we did discover things. The construction manager did discover some things. They weren't especially costly, but they needed to be addressed right away. And so it's a matter of the CM emailing the officers of the building committee to say, we found this situation, we estimate it's going to cost $5,000, and we'd like your approval to use our construction contingency to keep work going and authorize this. And then it goes to the full building committee at the next available meeting. This is in the main contract. This permission to do this is in Shawmut's main contract that was reviewed and approved back in July of 2014. So I don't know if reducing that amount would, I'm not a lawyer, I don't know if reducing that amount would require an amendment, but it is in the base contract.
Yeah, I understand certainly the need for flexibility to, cover things that come up. I agree with the chairman that having a $20,000, of grace money, as you call it, and being able to use that essentially for anything, anytime, that concerns me as well. I think perhaps a solution where you wouldn't have to amend the contract and would give us some peace of mind and would also give Shawmut the flexibility, perhaps something like keep the amount the same, however, put in a provision that if Shawmut discovers something that would require the use of contingency, that they are to notify us within 24 hours, and upon receiving such notice, either a subcommittee of or the entire building committee would have the opportunity to convene within, say, 48 hours, and in the event that we could not convene a committee or or a subcommittee, then Shawmut would have the permission to go ahead and do what they need to do. So this way, they have the flexibility to continue. But it gives a fail-safe for us that, as long as we can get together, whether it be a subcommittee or the full committee, that we have the opportunity to review what's necessary and approve it. But if for some reason we can't get together, it gives them the flexibility to do what they need to do. Just a thought.
Steve, you've been through this. I've seen it written 100 different ways, this clause, about use of contingency.
Right.
And my concern here is, and just relying on your background and experience, my concern here is we have a particularly sensitive project. You other than an emergency because the building is going to be damaged or there's a safety issue, you very, very seldom see the immediate need to use contingency. So the question is, the immediacy, I think we would understand. If it meant protecting the project or a safety issue and it was a cost, it would be spent and approved by the committee retroactively. My concern here is the amount. I'm thinking of a much lesser amount, and I'm thinking of of asking the committee in the future to recommend and appoint a 3-member change order committee for this, or use of the contingency. I'm just concerned. We fought so hard for this contingency. I don't think we ought to let it. We ought to have an open checkbook, and I don't mean that as a negative connotation.
Right. I mean, there's a couple of points. One is there's a contract, and we get that. We
We're
also,
right here. We're
right. So now
we're right
here
in
we
the
are,
same room.
Here we are, and this has been discussed since I've joined the committee, and it seems like 2 years ago, but it wasn't.
I think it was.
I do believe, and there's always conditions that come up, so I don't think we can count absolute. It's always a safety condition, but where I've seen arguments over contingency spend is what should really be a general conditions cost, which shouldn't be, which still, I believe, would give us the approval, even though if someone said, okay, I understand, that once we really understand as a full committee, saying that's not really a contingency cost. I would trust Shawmut in this situation, that they understand how precious this contingency is, that if we find 5 light fixtures that need to be replaced, that's not a contingency item. It may come out once it gets priced, but so I do think that's too much, given the fact that it's almost 10% of the contingency is shown here in the GMP, up to spend without prior approval in a change order process. But I also trust our partner here to make sure that we're doing the right thing. I really do, because I do believe for the benefit of the project that we need to have some sort of subcommittee that, I like your idea, 2 out of 3 at least have to be in the know, and we have to, whoever that 3 people are, they have to respond within a certain time frame.
Sure.
Other than certain safety issues, I mean, obviously, we cannot be hamstringing our CM on the site.
Okay, Ken, you've heard some of this background. What is your recommendation?
I mean, we have, most of our jobs were the CM. We had the same article in all of our contracts. And, us as a CM, we're acting on the best interest of the town of Fairfield. So we're out as your agent in the field, making sure that you guys are getting the job that you need. And it's the most cost-effective way of doing it, and we're not out there just to spend money. That's not our goal. Most clients trust us with that, and we have never had an issue at Shawmut where they have felt that we're just spending money on their behalf without just wasting money. That has never come up. So we feel this is very strongly to us, and we have vetted this out with Twig, over a year ago. We feel that if it is taken out or reduced, is kind of handicapping our efforts of completing a job that we want to complete for you. But we're not out there just to spend the money just because it's there. That's not our goal. That's not the way we do things at Shawmut.
Well, the,
If I may, to bring to the committee's attention too, because also part of the contract, Twig, or whoever, correct me if I'm wrong, there's a contingency sharing at the end of this project, which means Shawmut gets a piece of whatever's left over in that contingency at the end of the project.
up to $90,000.
Right. So,
90.
so a third of that contingency, what, I'm looking at a third of 270 that's on the list here. So there's also an incentive not to spend. And also, I think Shawmut also realizes as well, this committee is going to scrutinize everything as it comes through too.
Really?
So at the end of the day, really, the definition of emergency may be a little bit different, you know, when it comes down to this. Again, we're all worried about differing site conditions. We're all worried what's behind the wall. But if something's found behind the wall, does it need to be replaced today? It can't be a 24-hour email response. I don't see that being a huge issue.
I thought of an example. And you're correct. This is something, if it's a change order that can wait until the next building committee meeting, it waits until the next building committee meeting. Nothing is approved out of order. This is only to keep the job running or to protect persons or property, or if the risk of not doing the work exceeds what is practical to keep the job running. The situation that we encountered at Fairfield Ludlow High School was one of the first uses of the CM's contingency on that project, where we brought in temporary stairs as a means of emergency egress while we were doing work on adding to the science wing of that building. And when the temporary stairs were delivered, they were not acceptable to the building official and the fire marshal. And so everybody had to scramble to do something different to make the stairs acceptable, and it cost a couple $1,000s, but it had to be done right away because we could not start the work until that was addressed, because the students needed to be able to get out of the school
I wish I had
safely.
confidence in the industry, and I wish I had confidence about the way Fairfield sometimes runs their business when it comes to these construction contracts. I'm concerned about this. I don't think we want to hold up the meeting for it, but I do think that we need to have some, whether it's tightening up the communication, reducing the amount, or whatever, but I'm uncomfortable with this particular project. I know I can't believe you had this in every single solitary, $20,000 in every single solitary one of your contracts.
They're even higher, Jim.
It's amazing to
In
me, but.
certain jobs are even higher.
Yeah. But I think that we'll in the process of this committee responding to you or providing an avenue for you to use this money, we'll come up with something together that will work as far as communication is concerned. I just don't think that we can, as a committee, have a $20,000 open checkbook. The question, where it goes wrong is how the contingency is used. Whether it's a question of general conditions is usually where it falls apart. So rather than waste our time now because we want to approve this tonight, if you will agree to work with us as far as the communication is concerned, how we'll set up the communication, and how we'll track the contingency, I don't think there'll be a problem.
I don't have an issue, talking about this and developing a plan for communicating, but to take this out and reduce it, that's something that I'll have to talk to my council about.
Okay.
So that I can't guarantee.
Okay, we will work on it, and that said, let's move on to the next one, Twig.
Another issue.
Is there any other questions?
Okay. Another concern of the committee was that one of the allowances discussed field measurements and reporting inconsistencies, and the CM does do field measurements. It's for construction purposes, and they report them to the architect, but they're not out measuring, looking for errors in emissions or inconsistencies. If there is money remaining In the allowances at completion of the project, there is no reduction in general conditions, bond, insurance, or fees. And that is consistent with the contract documents as well.
So on item 19, does this allow the construction manager, while he's supervising the project, to get out from under responsibility if something's built inconsistent with code?
We own building the building per code. We don't own designing it per code. We own taking what's shown in the drawings and building that per code. So the heights of the devices for a fire alarm or electrical switches or whatever it may be, we own building this building per code.
So it says here that as you're doing your field measurements for facilitating construction, this is not for the purposes of discovering errors and omissions. If you don't discover errors and omissions, who does?
We'll find them out as we go along through the project, and if something comes up where it could be the building official, the fire marshal, it could be, somebody like that where they say this is not what we want per code, it could come up during the project.
Yes, please.
Ken, excuse me, you just made a statement about, that you said you own the building per code. Isn't that contrary to what it states earlier, farther up, where it's really the responsibility of the architectural firm?
No, what it states earlier in number
11, I believe.
11.
Yeah.
No. It's not.
Oh, my
Oh, on
number-
Twig's email.
allowance number
Number
11.
10.
Yeah.
Is that we will perform the work in accordance with the design set forth in contract documents. However, we have no responsibility for the compliance of the design for applicable code. So we own installing what's there per code, but if, let's say, there's 4 light fixtures that are supposed to be on emergency ballast, and only 3 are shown, and the building official, the fire marshal wants the 4 to meet the code of having 4, we would not own that 4th fixture with that emergency ballast. That's something that should have been designed per code for that 4th light fixture.
So as long as it's designed per code and included in the drawings, you're responsible to make sure that it's actually, okay.
Correct.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So, item 19 says that section 3.2.2 requires the CM to take field measurements for facilitating construction and reporting any inconsistencies to the architect, not for the purpose of discovering errors or omissions. Could you explain that to me? Because if you're not discovering errors and omissions, my only question to you is, who is? We're relying on you as the construction manager to manage the project and deliver the project in accordance with the contract documents.
Yeah,
And
we're
what
not
happens if there are
responsible
errors and omissions in the contract documents? It says here, if I read this correctly, that you don't have that responsibility.
for the design? That's correct. We don't own designing the project, to
Now,
meet
that's another paragraph we've already been through.
What paragraph
Requires the
is it?
CM to take field measurements for facilitating construction. I'm not sure whether facilitating construction, I love this, was written by an architect, all due respect. Right. I would like to say for completing or building the project, but anyway, so we're going to facilitate it by taking field measurements and reporting any inconsistencies to the architect, and not for the purposes of discovering errors and omissions. Just explain it to me. If you don't have that responsibility, who does?
Would it be helpful if I read the paragraph out of the contract? Perhaps? Because I accept, I
I don't know, I thought this
I
was citing the
accepted-
contract.
I excerpted certain things. No. Just for brevity, because this thing can go on and on and on. The way this clause reads, it's an A201, and it's section 3.2.2, and it reads, because the contract documents are complementary, the contractor shall, before starting each portion of the work, carefully study and compare the various contract documents relative to that portion of the work, as well as the information furnished by the owner pursuant to section 2.2.2, shall take field measurements of any existing conditions related to that portion of the work, and shall observe any conditions at the site affecting it. These obligations are for the purpose of facilitating coordination and construction by the contractor and are not for the purpose of discovering errors, omissions, or inconsistencies in the contract documents. However, the contractor shall promptly report to the architect any errors, inconsistencies, or omissions discovered or made known by the contractor.
Thank you. Steve?
So is that,
This interprets, the interpretation of this typically is that we didn't hire Shawmut to go out and check all the dimensions on the design. They're out doing verifying in field when they're starting to build something. If there's a problem, they'll bring it up, the architect. But we didn't hire them to go out and check all of DeStefano and Chamberlain's measurements before they started any work.
Yeah.
That's what that clause refers
Paragraph
to.
makes it, the full clause makes it clear.
the full clause makes more sense. I was just, didn't want to type the whole thing. Didn't want to put the whole thing in an email.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any changes to the assumptions and clarifications, Exhibit D? We had a lively discussion at the last meeting on Exhibit D.
When are we going to get a red line or a black line version of whatever changes were made to Exhibit D?
We didn't ask for it, but, oh, maybe we did, I don't know.
There weren't any changes in the allowances. I was asked to check with council to make sure that everything's synced up from a legal perspective, and then I went back, knowing what your specific concerns were, I went back through the contract documents to double check that everything aligned.
So you're saying
So
that
there really weren't any changes to speak
there's
of.
no conflicts or confusion regarding Exhibit D and the CM contract?
None that we found, neither me nor council.
Yes, go ahead, please.
Question, if we have a contract, why do you need Exhibit D? Because I assume you're saying contract will prevail. It would seem to me that Exhibit D doesn't add anything to it, and I wonder why it's in the GMP. Unless that's the protocol. to put
It
in.
is,
It
it is
is.
frankly the protocol, and what it does do is it brings the cost estimate and the backup to the cost estimate up to date and coordinated with where we are in this particular time of the project. I don't think, you have to be careful that Exhibit D doesn't change the contract, and that's why we asked it be reviewed. Is there anything unusual or exceptional? You heard us the last time. Any issues here that you
No,
modified or changed?
there was one item that was taken out. It was the old number 5, which spoke about warranties and guarantees. That was the only one that was taken out.
That was added
was-
to
Right.
11, I think it was number 11.
12,
Yeah,
yeah.
12,
12.
yeah.
It was a
But it
duplication.
is typical, very. And what can happen in these circumstances is a CM can actually adjust the original contract agreement with this document, which I'm assuming hasn't happened here.
Changing the agreement? No.
We've never encountered that. I'm sure it happens, but this is a typical process that we go through with every GMP that's presented, and we've never encountered any
So the committee,
modifications.
the committee's been presented with the final GMP proposal, and we're in the process of going through it. The list of trade contractors has remained the same. The project requirements summary sheet has remained the same. These are all questions.
That's
right, so,
correct.
yeah.
Yep, it
Yes.
has remained the same.
Everything else has remained the same in this document?
Yes. So the only things that changed were the added costs for those 2 trade contractors, and then the clarifications were cleaned up. Everything else has stayed the same.
This addendum to the CM contract we're considering here also includes the project schedule,
Yes.
and anything that we should know about the project schedule?
Yeah, so there is another,
Total duration, excuse me, is
kind of
what?
small in the GMP, so we have another handout that has a larger schedule, 11 by 17, that we can go over now or go over later.
You
Jim?
would, because I think our goal would be to approve this.
Sure. So, I think maybe 2 or 3 sheets in, there's 11 by 17 for the project schedule.
Right.
Yes, yep. So we try to highlight just some milestones on there and discuss some of the milestone dates.
Thank you, Twig.
Thanks, Twig. I would like, just Mark Vincent, project manager, to go over those milestones with you folks, if that's okay?
That'd be fine. It's in the the one we're going to be looking at's in the package here?
Yep,
It looks like this.
it's the schedule basically with highlighted items on it in red clouds. Okay, basically, obviously, getting started on time is a milestone date in itself, that we're mobilized and we're approved to go and can be ready by the 29th of February. Another key milestone, and this really dictates most of the project, is moving that building. You know, we plan on moving the building to the parking lot. If we start on the 29th of February, getting everything ready for that, all the equipment, all the cribbing, all the extra support steel underneath the building, starting on June 1st. So we planned for all of that, I'm sorry, not June 1st, April 1st. April Fool's, sorry. So we planned about almost 2 months for that whole process of getting the building into the parking lot. This is very contingent upon, you know, I don't foresee winter conditions in April being too bad. We should be able to roll it into the parking lot pretty safely around that time. So that would be one of our milestone dates as well. The next milestone date is going to be moving the building back. We do believe that we have plenty of time to get all the new foundational work done in the time that we have. There's no surprises in terms of materials, in terms of rebar, concrete. The marine piles are readily available, so we don't feel that the schedule in terms of doing the foundations can slip. That's not critical. Moving the building back is going to be another critical item, and getting that set on the new foundations. That's critical because it allows us to start doing all the work on the existing building, starting up all MEP systems, and starting to do the finishes and making it look better in the building as well. The next item I have, Jim, are we ready to move on?
Yep.
Okay, the next item I have is the west building repair. Okay, so we need to get everything all set with MEP systems in the existing west building so that we can finish that on time. A lot of that's going to have to do with the new electrical service. And then on the last page, you know, getting everything framed up and the decks and ramps and the building integrated together. And then obviously our completion date for 1/9/17.
Questions? Yeah.
The one thing I did notice, and I'm sure you've allowed for, is that moving the building to the parking lot puts you, if you go to going to the 25th of May, you're pushing up against Memorial Day weekend. Moving the building back to the new foundations, in that time frame, you're talking about Labor Day weekend being in there. What I just wanted to know is there anything you need to do in terms of coordinating public safety in the event that the move actually happens during one of those 2 weekends, or are you planning on making sure it's not during one of those 2 weekends?
Well, you know, we're not planning on working over the holiday weekends. Those are usually last case scenarios.
Okay.
I know that in our contract, we can't, you know, start early on the weekends till 8 o'clock in the morning. I don't see a problem, you know, with that.
Okay.
Rolling the building, and we're in our own zone. We're going to have all our equipment within our fenced-in area, and there will be no pedestrian access allowed into where we're working.
Mr. Chairman, one of the things, in fact, looking at the minutes, was the issue with how secure will that construction site be? And you raised the issue, will there be poles with sandbags on it, which any strong teenager could move? Is there been any further resolution on this thing? Are you satisfied, are they satisfied that sandbags
We are going
are
to
the
be
way
using
go?
driven poles with fencing and scrim. Our belief is using scrim on the ocean side may be difficult due to the winds and how much winds that scrim's going to take on the fence.
Was that able to be worked out in a neutral cost?
We are working that out with our subcontractor internally.
Okay.
Okay, and we're going to have a little logistics presentation, which that issue would come up at.
Correct.
I'd like to stick with the GMP. So we have a schedule. We have an Amendment 1 for the CM contract, which is this GMP document. We would be taking this project forward for town approval at $7,421,999. with a GMP of $6,589,629. Is there anybody on the committee that feels we need to discuss this further? Think we need another 6 months?
I have a question.
question.
And I'm wondering if I'm looking at the wrong draft from October 8th, possibly, from last meeting. I may be looking at one when we had the special meeting. But the GMP summary looks a lot different to me, other than just, so maybe I'm looking at the earlier,
Could have been the earlier one, Steve, yeah. And the one that was the summary, you're saying that on the fourth page in, that summary sheet?
Exhibit A.
Yeah, Exhibit A?
So I think you said the only two changes between the last one we saw 2 weeks ago and this one is the plus $5,000 for the K&M and plus $10,000 for Waters?
Correct.
So we had the add alternates already on there last time we saw this? I'm just asking.
Yes.
Okay. All right, sorry, I was looking at it.
So,
I
we-
could clarify something on the alternates. The alternate numbers that were designated, we actually changed those numbers so they would correspond to the actual alternate that's on the plans.
Right.
So
Okay.
that was the only other change on
Okay,
that
but this,
summary.
I'm sorry, because I'm probably looking at the one where we had the smaller committee meeting with, it says October 8th on it, so I was looking, it does look a lot different, I'm sorry. So it's only the $15,000 there, and then did that flow through
Yes.
everything else?
Yes, it did, yeah.
so we should probably vote on this document and accept it on behalf of the committee and to take it with us forward for approval. Does this document, what we're voting on, does that provide us at the end with a complete project in accordance with the drawings that we approved, the final contract documents?
Yes, it does.
Any other issues that we should know about before we vote on this document?
Not for voting, but I would like to maybe circle back about just the letter of intent, notice to proceed, kind of timeframe.
Why don't we discuss that?
Okay.
I don't want to disrupt our train of thought here, but the idea behind this is that you need to provide a letter of intent to your contractors on or before November 15th,
Correct.
okay? And by that time, we will have gone through the Board of Selectmen and Board of Finance. I'm going to talk about that schedule in a minute. And once we approve this, it gives you the opportunity to nail down these bidders.
Pretty much what we would want is after approval tonight, hopefully, then I can work with Twig to get the amendment signed. And then after we have that signed, we can go out, issue our letter of intent to the contractors and then lock them in. That'd be our goal.
Is this document we're looking at and these costs based on the whole public bidding process without exception?
Correct.
Anybody have any questions before this, before we generate a motion to accept the GMP? Is there somebody feel moved to make a motion to accept the GMP? Oh. First, there's been a motion made and seconded. Dave, is this seconder, or Steve? I don't know. That said, any discussion? So this is the GMP for Project 7A, believe it or not. And if there's no further discussion, I will entertain, yes?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was rushing it, actually.
I just want to make sure that this committee, and I already know the answer, so you'll forgive me in advance for asking the question, I hope. But I just want to make sure this committee understands that the project that we initially spent months and months and months going through and argued over and finally agreed to spend $6 million for, on top of the $5 million pavilion that's already sitting there now, that now, because of what we've heard from the chief fiscal officer, that we're going to approve spending $7.5 million, and that we think that that's the right thing for this town, only because we've been told that it's only going to cost us around $1.5 million out of our pocket. Okay? Because my belief is it's going to cost us a lot more than that. We're going to find other things, just like any construction project. I just want to make sure that that's what you're voting on, because I'm clearly not. because I think that's way too much money, regardless of who's paying for it. Thank you.
Hey, thank you. I think some of this question turns on the lockers, obviously, and bringing the project back to where it was. And if there's been a clear indication from, I think, Jerry, I'm glad you're here, clear indication from Parks and Rec that they definitely want the lockers back, or included in the project. Safe to say, yeah. That said, I would entertain that we vote on this unless there's any other questions, issues, edits, complaints, conditions.
Angst.
All those in favor, the motion is to accept the GMP. All those in favor?
We should have a roll call vote, on this vote. Everyone should vote rather than just raising their hand.
That's fine.
For the record.
That's fine. We'll go right around the table.
Yes, I agree.
Yes, I agree.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes?
No.
Yes. That was a yes from Rich.
That was a yes. Thank you. That takes care of that particular agenda item. That takes care of that particular agenda item. We still have more in this package. I did address, and I copied the building committee on several questions I wanted to have addressed by Shawmut at this meeting. And Ken, you want to take us through, I think that, whatever order you want. I think that the committee should know who and what we're dealing with going forward. I know we might have talked about it 12 months ago. So I'm looking particularly at your schematic about the Penfield Building Committee and the individuals involved.
Yeah, so I would like to maybe just kind of touch base on the project team, just to get a refresher about who's doing what and the names of folks and who's going to be running the job. So I'll let Brian McDonald just speak about the team.
Yeah. Included in your package tonight was a simple organizational chart. The head of the chart, of course, is the Penfield Building Committee. I will be the project executive for the project. I've worked with the town of Fairfield on 2 school projects previously, the Fairfield Woods Middle School and Stratfield Elementary School. I'm currently the project executive on 2 major projects in the town, one for Sacred Heart University and one for Fairfield University. The team that we've proposed for Penfield Pavilion is Mark Vincent, who will be our project manager, and Jeff Whalen, who will be our project superintendent.
And supporting Brian would be myself, and supporting Jeff would be Derek Whitehead. Derek was at the original interview. I'm not sure if you remember him. He was a gentleman that had moving experience and from Boston, so he will be involved supporting Jeff with the field. Tim Hussey is our safety manager, and then we have the project administrator and accountant working on the certified payroll reports and billings. Next item that we'd like to go over.
Hold a question. Brian,
Sure.
do you have time for this project, given what you just reeled off as your current responsibilities?
Absolutely. I'm down in the town of Fairfield almost 3 or 4 times a week.
Well, we may need you just for this project.
If I may?
Yes.
So in this org chart, there's 3 SDC people talking to the building committee. Is there one person respond? I understand the titles and what that kind of means, but do we expect to hear something from Jeff, something from Mark the next time, and then something from you the next time? Or do we have, is there one voice from Shawmut that we get to hear?
I will be at every one of the building committee meetings, along with Mark and Jeff as a need-to basis. So any concerns or any problems, they can come directly to me.
Okay.
And at the monthly meetings, Mark will be presenting a monthly report, which there's a copy of an agenda of what that includes, and Mark will go over that in detail.
Basically, what I have is the table of contents of what will be a monthly report when we start doing them as we get rolling. The report's going to have an executive report, which is going to include the project statuses, where we are to date, what construction activities are currently happening, and an update of project schedules. roughly a 2-week look ahead, a month look ahead, and so forth. It'll also have all the cost reports in it. It's going to have the updated cost report. It's going to have buyout sheets, the change estimate log, and cash flow projections. Next item will be all the subcontractor bid award list, which probably won't change, but we'll have it there for reference every time. And then we'll have the project control logs in the monthly report as well. This will be all the submittal logs, RFI logs, and the PCO/change order log. We'll also have an excerpt on job site safety for one of the sections. We'll have progress photographs and our subcontractor checklists. Any questions?
So this is this report would come to us a couple of days ahead of, or be presented? We've had issues here with this committee about getting information in advance. Is it possible?
However you want it, Jim.
Well, I mean, I think we ought to get it in advance so we have an opportunity to look at
Yeah,
it.
we typically would get it to the committee 2 days, 3 days in advance of the
Yeah.
monthly meeting.
Okay, let's make sure that happens.
Sure thing.
Thank you.
And then the monthly meeting, how, what's the proximity of the monthly report after the conclusion of a month? Is it a week after? Is
Be
it
the
2
next
weeks
meeting.
after? The next week, the
Yep.
next meeting?
Yep.
Okay.
I mean, if the building committee's on like the 2nd of a month, we're not going to be ready with it on the 2nd. I mean, we have to run all our projections and everything once the month cutoff date is there, so that would be difficult to get to. But obviously, if the building committee meeting's on like the 7th or something, their timing on that would be no problem.
And possibly if it could coincide with prior to the payment application review, the more it can coincide with that would be best, I think, for the committee. If you don't mind, I have a question. What, the difference between a change estimate log that would be in 1B and your cost report versus your project control logs that have a PCO and CO log, if you can explain that, I'd appreciate that.
Sure. So the cost report is overall summary. It'll show all the bid packages and where they started out, and then what's being executed in terms of in-scope change orders or out-of-scope change orders, and it'll show the balance remaining on more of a summary sheet. The change estimate log is more of any change that comes through, RFI, field conditions, submittal, owner requested change, building department change, will be tracked on a change estimate log. So every change will be tracked, and you'll be able to see if it was funded out of the GMP, if it was owner change order, and what was the change order number for the contractor, for the owner, and it's all in one sheet. That's pretty detailed. A lot of information is there.
Right.
We also try and categorize that each change. Is it a change due to unforeseen condition? Is it errors and omissions? Is it an owner requested change? So that it's kind of all on one sheet together, and each change is actually classified. The next one is a control logs, is more of the overall submittal log. So Mark has developed a preliminary submittal log already, and that's also in your items there. And it's the overall submittal log of everything that we see that will be submitted on, and it shows you how we're tracking in terms of when they're submitted by, when they're returned. If a submittal is running a little bit late, and we need to talk to Kevin about that, to try and say that, that one's important and why it's important. We try and track it on this log and work with Kevin together to try and flush out those important items. Same thing for an RFI log. It'll show all the RFIs, and if they're open or if they're closed, it'll show the answers, and it'll show how many days they've been in the system, and overall control logs.
Is there, between the PCO log, proposed change, right, and the CO logs, is that the same information as contained in the change estimate log? That's what it's,
Kinda. So the PCO change order log may include 10 CE numbers. So you want to have one change order a month, well, hopefully none, but if there is a change order on this job, we'll have one a month. So that one change order may include 7 or 8 different CEs.
Right.
And we're lumping them all together into one change order. So that PCO change order log is more of a summary in terms of out-of-scope changes. The CE log is everything, open book, in-scope, out-of-scope changes.
okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Jim?
Yes.
For the pre-construction plans, like the erosion sedimentation control plan, moisture control plan, dust and HVAC control plan, are you reporting on that regularly? And if you are, is it reported to the architect for approval? And Or is it part of your monthly reporting to us? This sort of outside our range. But is that being submitted over, in those plans, is it being submitted over to Kevin for review?
I think we'll work with Kevin. I mean, Kevin has some items already on his drawings for that,
Mm-hmm.
and we'll have to work through, go through permitting to make sure that what is shown is what is needed, and we'll have to work with, I'm guessing, wetlands and conservation to go through those details and engineering to make sure everything's all straight. But we can report on that. You know, if there are any items that are deficient, we'll report on it, and we'll make sure that, Jeff is going through that daily, making sure that silt fence is up and catch basins have sacks in it, and it's all been checked off on daily.
Okay. But you're just reporting to local authorities, no one on the design team is just monitoring it? Other than, I mean, just reviewing the reports on it?
Correct.
Okay.
Any questions on the monthly report before we move on to the next?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay. All right, so we went over the submittal/procurement log already. That was another attachment in there. Lastly, we just want to kind of go over the site plan for logistics. And Jeff, I don't know if you'd like to speak about that.
So, part of the package, and I think the committee has seen these before, we've updated them, we made sure that they reflect the new schedule. So the first section of the project, at the top it shows starting in March and April. Essentially, this is when we're going to be setting up the site at the end of February, beginning of March. We'd be putting up all the fence, and as we stated before, we're on the beach with the wind, frames and sandbags won't hold up, so all the posts will be driven. The fence will be set up around the site. We'll have gates at either end for access, because once the building is moved out into the parking lot, it pretty much splits the site in two. And at the far end of the site, there's pedestrian access, and we will definitely have plenty of room within the confines of that fenced-in area throughout the project for what we need to do. So essentially, setup is March and April. And then if you move on to the April-August layout, ultimately that's showing where the building is being relocated to. It's showing the new footprint of the building being constructed, piles and grade beams. And also at that time, we're going to be working on some of the stone revetment work. So essentially, will be a lot of different activities going on within that area. And really, the third page, the September to January, almost looks like the first, but essentially we have the building moved back in place. The east wing is, at that point, pretty much constructed. And we definitely will want to maintain the site as much as we can for as long as we can, so that we can get everything completed.
Please, go ahead.
In the April to August chart, someone coming to the beach, how will they access the beach?
If you look at the plan towards the right-hand side of the page, we've actually sat down with the town. I think we had meetings with the police department. And there's going to be an access point on the right-hand side. There's going to be a pedestrian walk right along the right-hand side of that. That'll be the main. That'll be where the yellow mark out is. That'll be the main point of access.
So there's only access on the west side of the site. There's no access, pedestrian access on the east side of the site?
On the east side of the site, we have that marked out as an emergency vehicle entrance. One of the reasons we sort of put our construction trailer outside is, I'm going to be in the building most of the time, but the main flow of traffic is going to be coming in and out. So we want to sort of be outside. We want to be right at that gate, anybody coming in and out. I don't believe we're really going to be able to ultimately stop pedestrians from using that unless we gate it off. But we were asked to make sure that maintained as an emergency vehicle entrance.
One of the big events in Fairfield is the 4th of July, and thousands of people will be on this beach. Is this the only way they'll be able to get off the site? There's no way that's going to happen.
The two sides, at the two sides, at each side of the site.
Have to be tremendous coordination with the police department, because again, I can tell you, having gone there every year, when they try to exit, there's a mass exit. And I don't see how, well, again, that's the only way it's going to be, but that's something that'll have to be looked at. I realize it's not your problem, but it's a problem for the town.
That's a good point.
I mean,
Yeah.
certainly the holidays, I haven't told my boss yet, but I don't want to be there. But, I really, I actually live on the beach at the other end of the state, and, I do understand the beaches and how packed they get and the amount of traffic they generate. I kind of live it every summer. But, I don't see where on holiday weekends, on major holidays, we certainly, it wouldn't be wise for us to be on the site on those particular days, and I don't believe that we would be having any construction activities going on, especially with the amount of traffic that's going to be cutting through there. So the site would be closed up, it would be secured, and we certainly don't want to be bringing people in and out.
Last year, they had a van of portable toilets. Those where that van is going to be, where you have an extreme left-hand side, is that where that van is going to be?
Yeah, last year, the portable toilets were
Parking lot.
just off of that emergency vehicle entrance, right where that small building is,
Right.
where the temporary power pole is. We do have provisions in that emergency sort of vehicle lane or out on the beach. I know that buried in the beach somewhere there, I think they may have at some point, I've only seen it, the remnants of it, but they may have had some facilities out in that open area of the beach over here, because I know that there was an ejector pump that I found kind of buried in the sand over there. And, certainly the town is going to be able to, have areas to put whatever facilities they need to add, but having them within the fenced-in area there's going to be too much activity for that to happen.
That was kind of my question related to that location, at least is only on the April through August plan, is why funnel people in this way why have portable toilets for the public right next to the trailer?
Those were where they were put last year. They're on the drawing. I've moved them up over here just to show that you guys have options on that. I mean, basically, this is showing these were where the toilets were last year. I believe they're pulled after the summertime. I drew some extra ones in up on the beach. Obviously, these portable toilets is going to be Town of Fairfield coordination.
And one other issue, the lifeguards presently have a shack where they change and leave their equipment. Where do you envision during this period of time the lifeguards are going to be housed and having their equipment?
They're in the section of the building that's getting moved out in the parking lot, so.
Good evening. I think there might be some confusion here. This past summer, we had one trailer, and that was up by Jackie Durrell, up on the hill there, for restrooms. We also did have over, on the left-hand side, I believe, 3 porta-johns. We won't be able to put the porta-johns up on the beach. Several reasons. We don't want them to spill, but also we can't get the trucks up there to clean them. The lifeguard station is over in the Jackie Durrell boat shack, so it's out of the construction area. If I may, just seeing the drawing for the first time, I noticed the hay bales and everything are out on the beach, for silt fence. Are people going to be able to walk in that area or no?
No, I think there's an issue here. We might as well address it. That fence is too far out on the beach.
Right.
And frankly, in the April to August time period, doing the riprap is probably exactly the wrong time to do it, because you're going to have so many people on the beach. You have the opportunity to do it in the fall, starting in September, right after Labor Day. So I would suggest that the riprap work, which was going to require an excavation, trucking, so forth, be done right after September 1st in an effort to stay ahead of the hurricane season. I'm being optimistic. And in the meantime, that fence line be pulled back so that people can use the beach.
There's one small problem with that, Jim. Part of that revetment package is using the existing concrete foundations for the revetment, and that would have to go when we're demoing out those foundations. Or else there would be some added costs from our site contractor for remobilization, moving concrete. All these foundations you'd have to move twice, and that would be very significant in cost. And move it, and then
You're
the cost of
showing
move-
if I'm reading this correctly, and please help me if I'm not, you're showing two site entrances, one on the easternmost corner and one on the westernmost corner. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So I have a problem with the one on the westernmost corner for two reasons. First of all, it's right next to the main pedestrian access. So you're going to have trucks going in and out of there at the same time you're going to have people going out of there. I think that's a recipe for disaster. Second of all, there's going to be construction going on right to the west of that because a new house is being built. So I think I'm just wondering why you're doing that instead of using the natural access point, which would be right in the center. And I see the building there, I'm looking at the right chart, but I can't believe that you don't have enough room to move the building 20 feet to the left or 20 feet to the right and make that your main access point. Because, again, from a safety perspective alone, you've got one of your main site entrances right next to the only or major access point for pedestrians.
If you're talking, I'm not sure if I read you correctly, but you're talking about having people walk through the middle of the site?
No.
Oh,
I'm
on the
looking
on
at
the far right.
your westernmost access point, which is, right, your site entrance.
Right.
The west gate.
So if you're looking at this picture, it's on your right. It's right next to, so you're going to have trucks coming in and out of, trucks and workers, right, coming out of there at the same point the pedestrians are. That's the only way pedestrians are getting on and off the beach.
Yeah, I can get out on the site, and we'll take a look, and maybe we can move it just to the outside corner of the moved building. Certainly the center of the building. I'm sorry. Certainly the center of the building.
You're right.
The building, it takes up that whole area. There's no way to get anything in. Even if we move the building 20 feet, it's not going to provide us what we need. But we can look at maybe just to the right side of the relocated building where it's, when it's pulled out, we can look at maybe doing a cut through there. We'll take a look at it, and we'll line that up with our construction plans as well, because again, once you pull the building out, you've essentially split the site in two. We have concrete pump trucks, concrete trucks that come in there, and I do see your concern with the pedestrian access. We'll have to look and see if there's a way to pull it closer into the moved building.
Or if, just as a thought, and I'm certainly not an expert on this, but if you were to move the storage trailer that's on the easternmost point, you could potentially have twice as much space for an entrance and exit and use that instead of having two. See where the blue trailer is on the left? If that blue trailer wasn't there, that would give you that whole corner. You could have, I mean, you're using the term tracking pad. I'm not familiar with the term tracking pad, but
Get the dirt off the trucks when they drive out.
thanks. Kind of like my doormat out front, my front door. You know, you could have a much wider opening there that would allow trucks to go in and trucks to go out, and have that be, because there's no pedestrian access there anyway.
On the one side.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll look, we'll see if we can come up with that. That does not allow us to get to the other side of the site, though. That's the problem with that.
You know, I have a problem with this and the discussion that's going along with it. You have two entrance and exit gates. Both of them are right adjacent to the pedestrian walkway or access to the beach. It seems to me you're just asking for trouble and increasing risk there. There's got to be a better way to do this than have the tracking pads and gates right directly adjacent to the sidewalk or street where people are going to be crossing or walking or whatever they're going to be doing. because they're going to be using the emergency vehicle entrance as well as the one on the west end Mr. Bass is referring to. I think they both have a problem. Isn't there a better way to do this?
I mean, you could just move both of them inboard.
Yeah, we'll
Just do the same
take a
thing
look at
night.
that. Possibly moving them inboard would probably alleviate a lot of that problem of
Yeah.
congestion.
The second thing is, I can't speak for the committee, but personally I object to doing the riprap work in April and, I mean, through the summer. I don't know how you're going to work that out in your schedule. We'll get to that in a minute. Jerry, as long as you're here with us, from a logistics standpoint of view, as far as Parks and Rec is concerned, what do you see here? Is there a problem?
Yes, I agree with the truck entrance. I would suggest moving them on the west side where that red car is, just off the building in the parking lot. And on the east side, move the one closer to the building, just off the main end, on the left-hand side of the building there.
Is the grade level there that you could come right off the street?
Well, they may have to do some grade work. But the other thing is, I think they'd probably have to check with, they may want to run it by the police department also for access. But I heard someone say that there'd be no pedestrian access on the left-hand side, on the eastern side here, by your trailer, by your,
That's where everybody's going to go.
that's where people are going to walk, okay?
Easiest, the quickest, the shortest?
And that's what we discussed a year ago, or maybe more than a year ago, about leaving access on both sides of the facility. And I also, I'm not sure exactly, and I guess we could walk the site just to confirm the locations of these things, because this doesn't give me a good picture, because I don't know whether if you're on that little sand strip that we have there. But I think last time we had the discussion, we were going to move your trailers a little bit more towards the building and give some of that parking so people could walk up those stairs that are on the west side. So,
It's going to be wide enough.
yeah, so I just, I want to make sure we're all talking the same thing here. And I'd be more than happy to meet you on the site and walk it. The only other thing is, and Jim, I agree, I didn't know that the silt fence and all that, and I understand there, but basically that would make the beach unusable for a good portion of the summer.
In terms of the placement of the silt fence, is that being driven by the Conservation Department or any regulations? Because I know that sometimes those silt fences, there's certain setbacks that are required, certainly for residential purposes. Is that what's driving the location of it for this? Or is it just,
We have to surround the site with, runoff protection, that sort of thing. I mean, I don't believe that there's a specific spot we have to put it, as long as we've captured any activity within our site that may run off.
so you can move it closer to the building without running afoul of any environmental regulations or Conservation Department regulations or anything like that?
Yeah, as long as we're within our work zone.
Okay.
I have a problem with what was referred to just a little while ago. When we talked about using the demolition material from the footings as part of the riprap, we discarded that because there were concerns about rebar sticking out of it if it got exposed or so forth.
We were informed to cut all exposed rebar, all exposed rebar edges off of it.
Since I don't ever remember hearing that said, who informed you?
I'd have to go back into my database in my computer, but I believe that was what was bought out in the bid package. I believe it was the architect, Kevin, that gave us that direction.
So you're going to have to figure out a way that this beach is not disturbed during the summer as far as riprap is concerned. If they have to take and stockpile the footings or break them up and put them into a stockpile, which they're going to do anyway, somebody's going to be there with a hydraulic ram breaking them up and somebody else is going to have to stockpile them. So that's a problem. I don't believe that you're going to be able to convince this committee to take 50 feet of that beach all the way along this pavilion right in the high season. So we'll need you to come back to us on that.
Okay.
Well, we also have to get heavy equipment to be able to do that work in that area.
I know what it's going to look like. That's why I'm concerned about it, whether it's heavy equipment or whatever.
If I may, and I respectfully, I want to disagree with, we have a job to build and on schedule, and if we're talking about adding costs, I've already dwindled contingency to get this built. The timing has been dictated by the process. I understand that the beach is important, and I'm not saying that, but we need to, now we're confining where we can put fences to do work productively. Now we're talking about potentially spending other contingency to move gates and maybe do other curb cuts. I think we've got to be careful about what we bought, the timeline we bought it. Let's get this project built. I'm sorry to disagree with you, but...
Also realize that during the time that the riprap is probably going in, we're driving piles at the same time. Not many people are going to be wanting to hang out right next to the silt fence.
It's
Driving piles.
I'm concerned about the use of the beach. I'm asking the construction manager to come back to us with some sort of remedial plan that would minimize the use of the beach. I'm going back to what Mr. Lombardo was referring to. You've got to, whether it's 4th of July weekend or the entire summer, you've got a very active beach here, and we ought to be able to do a better job at giving as much of it back as possible to the citizens of Fairfield. And I also agree about these construction entrances. They're right smack in where you have beach access. We didn't design this. They designed it. So they have to come back and tell us how they're going to do it differently.
I'm not disagreeing with the safety issue. However, I understand people will walk. You can place sidewalks and people still walk on the grass. I mean, it happens all the time. The fact is, what we're also not talking about is we're looking at one 8.5 by 11 aerial view. This is not the only access to the beach, whether people use it or not. We're discounting the fact that right on the left-hand side of the beach, there's another pass-through, there's another pedestrian walkway already there to get to the same beach. My vote would be, is I'd close all this off to get people away from this site, period. We have to live with this project as the town of Fairfield for 10 months. Let's get in, get it done, keep our cost in line, and get out of here.
We have
That's
to
my-
mitigate risk, and we have to mitigate the inconvenience to the people of Fairfield using this beach. That's what our goal is going to be, and that's what they're going to come back to us on.
Okay.
I understand where you're coming from, and I appreciate it, and I know we want to keep the project moving, and I know we will once we get started. But the committee's raised these questions. You need to give us a response, that's all.
Okay.
It's not that difficult. If it was, that's it. Anything else about the logistics plan, site logistics plan? We're going to have to get into it, because this is going to be a summer project now, whether we like it or not. Yes, Andy?
The north side, so the north fence along the street. In your reviews with the town, is the intention to keep that sidewalk open the whole time, or do you not want people, if you're moving the construction entrances to the street side, do you not want people walking down that sidewalk? Is it better to pull the fence line all the way up to the curb line? I mean, are you reviewing this with Joe or the police commission, or who are you reviewing the logistics plan with?
These were reviewed with the police department.
Yeah, we reviewed it with the building department and the fire marshal. We don't have a problem. I mean, if we can take more real estate along the sidewalk, that's fine, but, the perimeter fence, the 6-foot-high fence along the sidewalks is sufficient protection for pedestrians walking along through here.
Okay.
We'd rather keep them off that side, but like you said, there is a lot of activity during the summer, and it's very hard to keep,
Understood.
So pedestrians can still use that sidewalk?
the way we're set up right now, yes.
So, just for the public access issues, then, the sidewalk is going to remain. You're going to have access at each end of the building. There's going to be a construction fence, which is going to be maintained tight to the ground and without any breaks, so that kids or nobody can get on this site. Is that what I'm hearing?
Correct.
Any other questions on the site plan?
observation, Jim?
Yes.
I think that once this project is underway, I don't think people are really going to want to go to this beach. I think you're going to have very few people coming to this beach. They'll go to Jennings, they'll go to Sasco. We have 4 other beaches, so I'm inclined to agree with Steve on his points. I think we ought to just do what we need to do to get this project done. I don't think it's going to inconvenience too many people, because I don't think they'll be there.
You
With
take
due
the,
respect, I think you're wrong. And certainly they're going to be there on the 4th of July. So again, even if we decide we're not going to worry about the beach, we got to make sure that people can get on that site. But what happened last year? We had a full turnout, right, at the 4th of July?
Yes, we had a very good crowd.
Yeah.
The beach was
And I think there's going to be a
utilized.
safety issue. If they start walking out,
Well, I'm just what I was raising is where the silt fence is. Okay, if it's just silt fence, if I understand this, where the red line is out on the beach, and silt fence is what?
no,
No, it's
no, it's going to be chain link fence.
Fence with a silt fence.
Chain link fence.
On the bottom.
One good high tide, the silt fence is going to be somewhere, and the hay bales will be somewhere else, but
Okay, then I misunderstood it. I just saw silt fence with hay bales. Okay, so that's going to be a chain link fence.
yes,
How high?
6.
So we'll keep. When I saw silt fence
No.
and hay bales, I just thought it was only a 2-foot.
We need to make sure.
Very
yeah,
good.
this-
Thank you.
This site has to be secure,
No,
period. It's right in the middle of a public area.
right.
It's an
And all I could
attractive
see
nuisance.
is. Thank you for correcting me.
Yes.
Just one comment, as you're looking at moving this to give the public more beach area, I would err on the side of caution to keep them as far away from the site and worry about their safety and not necessarily how much beach they're going to get. Because the closer you move that fence, the closer they're going to get to where you're working, the closer something could, the higher the risk is that something could happen at that building that's going to get someone, or they're going to get the ability to climb over. So I understand we want to give them beach access, but we also want to keep them safe. And I agree with Steve. This is 10 months. We've been waiting for 2 years. Let's just get this done and keep everybody as safe as we possibly can.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions on the logistics plan? You will get back to us on these comments. This is not something which is going to hang the project up. We've got time to do this and do it right. That said, is there anything else from your presentation? I didn't look at my list, but we cover everything that I asked you about?
I believe that was it, Jim. I think we went through all the bullets that were on the email from Tuesday.
Okay.
Oh, you know what, there was one item that you asked for advice about the owner's.
Correct. I'm going to get that as an agenda item. We can hold on that one. And you're comfortable with the letter of intent between you and purchasing to get that kicked off?
We would need the signed amendment to get the letter of intent going, correct.
Okay. Are you aware of that, Twig, Holland?
Miss Holland?
They'll be looking for the executed amendment before they issue their letters of intent? I'll leave that to purchasing authority? Yes. Okay. I don't think we have to review it. The committee has a letter from bond counsel regarding the use of funds that were originally approved. I think it's a moot point at the moment because, again, we're not in the funding business, thank God. Next steps and dates, I will say that in the absence, on behalf of the committee, in the absence of the committee, I did do 2 things. I asked the first selectman about what the best dates were, and then, with his permission, I contacted the current RTM moderator regarding the RTM. And at the moment, we're talking, we have dates as far as presenting this project for confirmation of funding or final budget, whatever, I don't know exactly what we're going to call it. But Board of Selectmen, I believe, help me out here, what was it, I got it. The Board of Selectmen on November 4th. It's been verified with the First Selectman's Office. Board of Finance, December 2nd. It's been confirmed with the chair. And then, at the moment, the tentative schedule for the RTM is December 7th with committee meetings and December 14th as the vote or the presentation.
Question. I know, obviously, we have an election coming up. The Board of Selectmen, you're good. I don't know when the new members of the elected bodies will be sworn in, so what I'm concerned about is that Board of Finance, you might be all right, but RTM, you might not be in terms of having the same cast of characters, and my concern would be that if there's significant changing of the guard with those two bodies, which there could be, if you're giving a status report, you may get waylaid with a lot of questions that have already been answered because you have new members. Just a concern. I mean, nothing critical, but something to keep in mind that you may be dealing with new elected bodies at that point.
After the election.
End of November, beginning of December.
Yeah.
Don't know. All I can do is go through the office of the First Selectman, who will report to, and verify these dates, which I've done on behalf of the committee, and we may change the dates, I don't know, but right now, I know that we're appearing before the Board of Selectmen for a briefing and a request for confirmation of funds, and whether the Board of Selectmen will bring forward, or the Chief Fiscal Officer will bring forward a new bond resolution, I don't know. But right now, the 4th, December 2nd, 7th, and 14th are where we are.
When's election day, the 3rd?
Yeah.
Third. Can someone find out what the status would be? I mean, I think I know the answer, but I think, for the committee's sake, if there is a change in representation in the First Selectman's office after midnight of November 3rd, what happens to this November 4th meeting? Judy wants to give us the answer.
Yes, Judy.
Swearing in is on the 16th, Monday the 16th, the third Monday of November. So all business can continue to that point if there's a change. So there will be a meeting of the Board of Selectmen on November 4th with the
Sitting board.
the same.
All I can tell you is these dates have been confirmed. This committee has a hard enough problem just getting this project off the ground, let alone rearranging the governance for the, and dates for the town of Fairfield. We could come forward with a proposal to move the election date.
Good luck with that.
Yes.
Jim, what is our ceiling to not disrupt the proposed project schedule? Like, what are we bumping up against with our local funding approval schedule?
It's my understanding we're already bumping against it, that they're going to proceed with a letter of intent, which takes you to a start date of
2/29, I believe it is.
Yep.
2/29.
On site.
What's been going on, I think, where we are with this, let's put it this way, we need to conclude our business as far as approvals during the month of December, in order for them to be able to do what they're supposed to be doing and have these bidders who have confirmed holding their bids to be able to move forward. So we need the December vote.
Vote from
RTM. Each of we're going through the same drill we went through before.
No way we can have all 3 meetings in November? You requested, and they told you that the earliest they could have the Board of Finance is December 2nd?
Right.
They don't have a meeting in November?
I think they do. I think they
have to have a
do.
meeting in November, don't they?
Yeah.
Every month?
Yeah.
I mean, again, I don't know what's going to happen in the election, but I would assume if you change the guard, legitimately, they're going to ask a lot of questions and maybe significantly delay the project. So I don't know if you can force us to meet with us earlier, but if
I'll
if
certainly
there's
bring
any
it
way-
up. Certainly bring it up. Well, yes, Rob.
I'm just hearing that it's going back before those bodies for a vote, that concerns me a significant deal. My understanding was that we had a fully funded project, and that the purpose of meeting with the town bodies was to provide a status report about where we are, and really more of a courtesy and in an effort to be transparent. I would just ask the chair, where do we get the directive that we needed to have a vote? Because that wasn't the way I read the resolution from bond council. I could be wrong, but.
The first selectman has requested, when I said to him, please provide us with next steps, he wants to have the committee and the project come before the Board of Selectmen, not the committee to come before, but a representative of the committee, for approval of the new funded amount.
Playing ping pong here.
And based on a project that has been bid, that was his other requirement, that we had a GMP, and it was backed up by public bidding.
If that's what the first selectman said, I believe he's wrong. And I think what we need to do is to get some direction from either the town attorney or bond counsel on this, because I think that it would not be in ours or the town's best interest to have this go through the voting process again. This is too loud, I'm sorry. And I don't know that legally that we have to do that. I think if the first selectman is saying we need to go back for another vote, I think he's mistaken. And I think before we go through this exercise again and risk opening Pandora's box, that we should make sure that we have to do this.
Okay, so we have the two pass. One would be a briefing and an update
Yes.
to each of the bodies, and the other would be the more definitive proposal, which would be briefing, update, and request for approval because of
I thought you were the one at the last meeting who said that we only had approval for $6 million, and the only way we could proceed to go to $7 million, to go back to these bodies and get approval to spend the additional $1 million. What you seem to be talking about tonight is a complete reversal of that position.
No. What we had was a revelation from Mr. Mayor that there were $2.5 million left unspent from a prior bonding resolution that was approved when I was on the Board of Finance a couple of years ago. What I requested was a opinion letter from bond counsel to confirm and verify that we could use those unspent funds for this project. And we received a letter stating that, yes, we can. So as far as I'm concerned, the funding has been approved by both of those bonding resolutions already.
But I thought we only had the approval we got was to spend $6 million, and I don't believe that we can spend $7 million without going back and getting approval for the additional $1 million.
Bond counsel says otherwise.
I think, I read bond counsel's remarks, and I'm not an attorney, but from what I read, it indicated that those monies could, in his opinion, be spent for that. However, that still going back to the point that was made, the project itself had a cost cap of $6 million. And that was by the RTM. There were 2 points, right? 2 points of the RTM. One was the cost cap. Second was a bonding resolution. So you have two completely separate issues. Bond counsel only addressed one of those issues.
Mm-hmm. I think it requires further clarification from the town attorney and bond counsel to be sure. But what I'm saying is that before we go through this whole dog and pony show again and risk losing the funding that we have because we might have a new set of characters on the town bodies, that we better be darn sure that we actually need to do that. And I think that can only come from someone who's qualified to render a legal opinion in this matter, which would be town attorney.
Okay, I hear you. I'll take it back to the first selectman. Again, his direction was he wanted to proceed with the approval process, unless I misunderstood him, to the points here, other than yours, I might add, at the moment, that we have a new number, that it's $1 million, $1.3 million or $1.4 million higher than it was, and that we should get the approval for that. And I like the idea of trying to move it into November, although I don't know how easy that's going to be.
They can do special meetings, too.
Yeah. Our problem is that we have studiously avoided getting into the funding issue, and and that's been pretty good. I think we ought to also try to studiously avoid running the town. So I'll just bring it back to the first selectman. We report to the Board of Selectmen. I'll bring this back and say, tell us what you want. We'll do it. We have enough paper. That said, have we beat that one up pretty well?
I think we beat the dead horse.
I will take the message back.
This could come back to haunt us. I think if we polled the committee, I know I could not vote to move ahead to spend $7 million when we only had approval for 6. I don't care who's going to write the check. I don't think the issue, I think even is right on point. There's 2 issues. Is what's your approval for, and once you get the approval, who's going to pay for it? There's no issue with who's going to pay for it, but there is certainly a question about that.
Approval.
And I think for us to move ahead and then the RTM come back and say, where was your authority to $7 million? I don't think this is a casual remark to the first selectman, can we do this or not do it? I think it's right on point. I think we have to go back to everybody and get approval. I'd like to poll the committee how they feel on this, because I think this is a critical issue.
Well, I've already gone on record at the end of the last meeting during a public session when I was asked by that gentleman sitting right there, do you plan to go ahead without going back for approval? And I said no. So I don't mind polling the committee, but I think I know where everybody is. Let's go down the table.
I mean, we've been down this road a million times. The funding piece of it, we're doing the direction. We're not doing that. The Board of Selectmen is directing the funding process for this. So we're, like Jim said before, we're following their directive. And he doesn't feel comfortable following the direction of the bond council from what I can see so far. We follow that. We're staying out of that mix.
Bond counsel said there's funding there. The chief fiscal officer said there's funding there. That's nice for us when we go for approval, because we can say, by the way, there's funding there, available. My feeling is there'll probably be another bond resolution if it's done right, and we'll have to get the votes for that. Does anybody object to the, I mean, are we on the same page here?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, yes.
Ellery, you seem to be,
No, I agree.
okay, thank you. All right, we want to move this along if we can. The question, the one remaining agenda item is project management oversight. And I think that we have a number in our budget. We have proposals that we've received, Twig. I don't think we're going to solve this problem tonight. The question really is, we want it, we need it, and input from Shawmut, from you, Ken, as far as how does it fit in? Is this something, knowing what you know about this committee and about the project and the team that you've built, is this a function we need, and where does it fit in? So forth. So can we, in the 5 minutes or so remaining, can we get your input?
Sure. So we have done it both ways, you know, on a lot of recent jobs. We have jobs that have owners reps and other jobs that do not. Either way is fine with us. You know, we don't have a favorite over the other, but we are willing to work with anybody that the building committee wants to bring on board. It would just add a layer between us and the building committee, and just as a check-in point. But if not, then we're fine. We're rolling this out by ourselves. So either way is fine with us.
Well, you've offered to provide the budgeting. You've given us a number already for the financial management of the project.
Yes, to manage the soft cost accounting and the soft cost invoices. So the invoices would come into the town of Fairfield. I'd work with Twig to get the invoices to, oh, actually not the Twig. Well, actually at the end of the year it won't be Twig. With the town's accounting department to get the invoices over to Shawmut, and then we would track the invoices in terms of what has been budgeted, what has been committed, and then we'll bring them to the building committee for approval. We really can't state that they're the right amount to pay. We're just bringing the invoices over to the building committee for voting and for approval, and we would track the spending of each item on the soft cost side and give an overall project budget of here's what we spent on construction, here's what we spent on soft cost, and here's what you had to date, and here's what's going forward. Had done that before in the past on 2 jobs in the town of Fairfield. So we're willing to do that if the building committee would like. If not, we're willing to work with the owner's rep as well. Either way is fine with us.
Twig, we have 3 proposals.
We do. I haven't looked at them in a while, but I know that we put, I think it was $78,000 in the soft costs as a recommendation to hire an independent owner's rep. In addition to some of the cost tracking and so forth, with just looking at invoices and vetting them and so forth, one of the things that the committee may want to keep in mind is that you've got the FEMA component of this project. And tracking costs may require some additional work for justification to FEMA and so forth. So I think, not to disparage anything that Shawmut is prepared to do, but I think the committee might be well-served to hire an independent program manager on this project, only because it's got some unique characteristics.
Steve, did we end up with you, both of you actually, right? Sitting right in my view here? Vetting out the 3? Or was that the previous 3?
I did the previous 3, I think.
I may have done, I reviewed the last 3. The numbers were all, I think 76, 5, the numbers are all over the place.
Right.
I thought the responses were, 2 of the 3 were complete. I just want to take a look again, because my concern is to wedge into 76.5 to get what we want. Especially, I do agree with Twig, it'd be great to have someone to help us with FEMA, but I think the breakouts are going to come from construction manager
Yeah.
anyway. Are we just asking someone to sit at that table as the owner's rep, just to hand documents from Shawmut to that company or that person to talk to us? Is it the best use of
Our
the
money.
oversight dollars, given the fact that it is, I'm not saying it's a small project, I know it's highly visible. We're not talking about a multi-$10 million school project.
Right.
So we'd have to go back out to the street. I don't even think we have anyone at 76.5, if I remember correctly, somewhere, because the numbers came in a little bit odd from monthly rates. I think we just have to call these people in, the 2 or 3 that bid, and really figure out what the value add is to manage the soft cost for us. If that's what they're going to report when we're getting a monthly report that's open book from Shawmut, and we get to review all the changes, and I feel this committee is I really do. I think this committee understands the construction process enough in this project that I'm wondering if we need just someone to sit in the middle.
Do you often provide these services?
We do sometimes, yes. Not all the time, but we have done it in the past where certain clients want us to act more on, overall and manage their costs, and we have done it before.
Okay, we'll table it, but we've got to resolve it. And if you could, Twig, would you mind just circulating the proposals again to us?
Well, I was going to suggest, why don't I recirculate everything to all the committee members so that you can take a look at them again. And I would encourage you to interview 1 or 2 of the candidates that came in.
Well, help us with our thinking.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yep.
While you're sitting there, I just want to thank you for all of your efforts on behalf of this committee. I understand you're leaving, retiring?
Retiring.
What?
Yes.
No.
Wait, not till it's
I am.
built. It's like 5 years.
Yeah, I have, I turned in my notice of retirement a few weeks ago in advance of my 65th birthday. And my last day of employment with the town is December 31st. I notified I called all the building committee chairmen, actually, and then I did my best to notify as many folks as I could. And so it's a good time to go, if there's ever a good time to go, because...
Another endorsement for our project.
Yeah, right. Run while you can.
Yeah, because it'd be nice to build this sometime before the rapture.
Well, Twig got
But,
an addition.
Fairfield- I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
No, Fairfield Ludlow High School is the additions and renovations, and the roof is done. We're trying to get the PCB abatement and the windows bid, perhaps before I leave. Riverfield is in very good shape. Osborne Hill is in very good shape. And so before anything else starts, and I either wait, postpone, or leave in the middle of something, it seemed like December was as good a time as any.
I was going to say, Twig got 5 years of credit towards her retirement for working with this committee.
That's all?
So it was originally 10 years, but we negotiated it down. But thank you very much. You've
You're
been a
welcome.
huge help to this committee, and especially recently with these contract issues and so forth.
It's been a
Appreciate it.
challenging project, and it's been
Yeah.
a privilege to work with everyone
Well, I think we've
here.
got it going,
And,
I hope. Any
and I'll,
questions?
I'll still be here for, until December, so,
All right, thank you.
thank you.
Public comment?
I have a question.
Yes.
Procedurally.
In a word?
What have you approved tonight versus what is the first selectman asking you to approve? Aren't you now obligated, once this letter is signed as of November 15th, you're obligated to pay Sharma to do this project, correct?
I'm not sure exactly about the procedures in the public process. However, what we did approve tonight, the first selectman requested that we go through the approval process and that we go through it with a project that was bid and included all the costs that we knew about. And the best way to do that is to use the vehicle of the GMP, which is what we've done.
You approved the GMP already.
We did.
And if,
Not already, we approved it tonight.
okay, but if Twig and the first selectman signed the letter of intent with
Right.
Sharma as of November 15th, is the project not therefore locked in financially?
The letter of intent, you're getting into an area that we could spend another 2 hours and 15 minutes on, but the letter of intent can be contingent upon anything, including funding. But I don't know how they're going to do it. I'm leaving it up to them. We stayed out of financing somewhat successfully. Hopefully, we'll stay out of contract administration. Yeah, right. For our to pay?
Nice.
Any new business
Just a question.
questions?
Who did you intend would attend the meeting on November 4th? Did you intend the whole committee to be there or just a selected group?
What we've done in the past is I've made the presentation on behalf of the committee after I've circulated the presentation document to the committee, and those committee members that want to have shown up. And there are not many of them that do.
Oh, come
What is your
on.
pleasure? Is your pleasure?
Oh, I think the more committee members we have, there, the better. But it's not a sign of interest or lack of interest. It's, credit, no credit. Questions? Rich? Yes?
When you meet with the first selectman, I wonder if Rob shouldn't be in attendance when he's got the time.
I think you said if I meet with the,
Can you
meet with the first selectman to bring our vice chair, Rob Alito?
No, I'll be,
Yeah, I think we lost.
right, because he seems to be, seems to be a difference of opinion between what,
No, I agree.
I'll be there.
seems to be a difference of opinion between Rob and Mike. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I think I got it, yeah.
Yep. I can
Is
do
that a Chardonnay?
Water, LeBlanc.
No, I think that's a good idea.
Yep.
And I communicate with our vice chair and secretary on literally everything. Of course, it drives them nuts, but I don't go in the woods alone on anything with this deal. Any other questions? New business, old business?
Motion to adjourn?
Motion been made to adjourn, seconded. We're adjourned. Thank you.